Welcome to this latest edition of ABN Cast. My name is Lee Hayhurst. I'm editorial director of ABN, and I'm here in the ABN Cast studio. And joining me remotely is Martin Jarvis. Martin is the chairman of Aviation Action, an industry charity that focuses on mental health and well-being. Martin, thanks for joining us today on ABN Cast.
You're very welcome. Good to meet you for the first time, Lee.
It is, although not actually face-to-face, but maybe one day we will do that.
We don't meet face-to-face anymore, do we? It's all over.
I think we should do it. I think it's good for our mental well-being. Maybe we'll talk about that in a minute.
Absolutely. Good segue.
Look, this discussion happens at actually quite an interesting time for not just for the charity, for mental health in general, which we'll touch on in a minute. But before we go into that, just talk us through a little bit about the history of Aviation Action, the founding of it, and the story behind it's the idea of what you're doing in the industry.
Yeah, of course. So back in May 2020, it was really during the height of COVID. Clearly, there was a lot going on in aviation, specifically in regards to redundancies, the whole airlines shutting down, airports no longer operating, and there were a lot of people, like many other industries, spend a lot of time at home, and mental health, not just in aviation but across the board, was really coming to the fore, really, and the risks that come with mental health, particularly within aviation. So personally, I wrote an article. I collected my thoughts about what I'd considered quite a sort of prominent period in my life. My background, I'm an ex-Air Force search and rescue helicopter pilot, currently now a civilian helicopter search and rescue pilot. So I just put some things on paper really about my own mental health and some of the things that affected me. And one of those was when we do a rescue, we'd pick up a casualty, we'd drop them off at hospital, and then we'd very rarely know what would come from that and whether the casualty survived, and we'd basically get bounced to another job, and that would be it. And I suffered a little bit with that, where I didn't feel like I had closure, because I was putting my life at risk. I was putting my crew's life at times at risk to rescue this person and then drop them off at hospital. So there was one occasion where I picked up a young boy off Scarfell Pike, and we dropped him off at Newcastle Hospital with head injuries. And then a week later, his dad came to visit us up RAF Bulmer and just talked us through the day, and ultimately thanked us for saving his son's life. And it was a really poignant moment in my career where, for once, I did have that closure, and I knew that what I was doing and the sort of mental health challenges that was presenting to me was for the greater good. So I put that on LinkedIn. Immediately when I pressed send, I regretted it, and I was anxious about the sort of response I was going to get, because I felt like I'd kind of opened myself up to criticism and others, but actually it was really, really positive. And as you mentioned, Chris Wilde, who was head of operations at Manchester Airport at the time, got in touch with me, and he said, I'm really interested in starting up a mental health and awareness charity for the aviation industry, specifically for aviation, supported by people in aviation. And he'd read my article, and he said he thought I'd be a really good fit, particularly bearing in mind I had a military background at the time and I was a pilot. So, I had those immediately, the sort of connections that I could forge with people who may be suffering from their own mental health within the industry. So myself, Chris, and a group of others in May 2020 set up Aviation Action, and it's kind of flourished from there, really.
Yeah, that's a great story. And Chris himself obviously comes from more of a civilian aerospace background, and obviously what you were doing and what you experienced is highly stressful because you're in extreme situations. Having said that, you look at the aviation industry in general, and it's a high stress industry in general, isn't it? So although this charity was set up during COVID because of the additional stresses of the COVID period, it's a charity that you might have thought could always have existed, because there are particular stresses about working in aviation that are quite unique to the industry.
Absolutely, and I think it's a really good point, because I think a lot of these things were heightened during COVID, and we saw the opportunity to help people who were who were hurting at the time. We knew that people were getting made redundant. We knew that people were at home having to live very different lifestyles to what they'd become accustomed. We knew that people were having to find jobs potentially in different industries. We knew that people, even simple things like their diet was changing because they were spending a lot more time at home, and so helping them with nutrition, helping them with fitness. So certainly in the early days, it was very much the focus on supporting those individuals through the specific challenges that COVID was presenting. But it is a really good point in the sense that we have had to evolve since COVID, because the challenges that people are facing now are very different really to the challenges that people were facing back in COVID. We kind of gone back now to things like burnout and work-life balance and fatigue, some of the things that they would have experienced before COVID, maybe had a very different outlook on life during COVID, where they were spending time at home, spending time with their families, getting to spend lots of time with their children. And now all of a sudden they're back flying, particularly the pilots, long-haul flights, spending a lot of time away from their family and children. And I've heard a guy called Paul Cullen, who I respect a lot and followed a lot on LinkedIn, had various conversations. He talks about the goldfish bowl, where people have gone from being out the goldfish bowl to being put back into the goldfish bowl, and then being out the goldfish bowl again, and how very sort of cyclical those life changes are, and how it just gives you a glimpse of other ways you could be living your life.
Yeah, obviously, and aviation went from this period of complete shutdown, so being in fear that you haven't got a livelihood and the job won't be there when things get back to normal, to getting back to a situation where it was actually quite difficult to cope with demand. So many airports were struggling with a lack of resources, but lots of customers, and that in itself is an extremely stressful situation. And of course, in aviation, there's not many, most of the jobs in aviation you can't do from home. So you mentioned work-life balance. A lot of professions have been able to sort of embrace the work from home ethos, but not so in aviation. So that must play a part in people's mental health, and I'm sure that's what you hear from the people you're helping.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can't fly an aircraft from home, but it's also, air traffic controllers, the people who are doing the baggage control and loading the aircraft. So absolutely, it's certainly in the earlier days of recovering from COVID, burnout and work-life balance was a real issue, because people were being asked to do the job that they were doing previously with less resources, less manpower, and the acceleration back to where we are now has been rapid, but the manning levels aren't where they were pre-COVID. So it is certainly still presenting a real challenge and a shifting challenge for us as a charity in the way that we support people.
Yeah. I said at the beginning it was a good time to talk to you. It was an opportune moment. There's two reasons for that. Mental Health Awareness Week starts on May 13th, and you're currently in the middle of an initiative called Run the Runways. So talk to us about Run the Runways first, and then we'll talk about what Mental Health Week means.
Yeah, sure. So Run the Runways is Aviation Action's annual fundraising event, and it sees participants running the length of a different runway every day throughout May, and that's virtually mostly, but there are occasions where we do actually run the actual runway. Yeah. And it doesn't matter if you walk, run, jog. The whole point of it really is just getting out, spending a little bit of time reflecting on your own mental health and well-being. And my message to people really who are taking part of the event is, as long as your mental health and your physical health is better at the end of May than it was at the beginning, then you've achieved the aim, really. The beauty of Run the Runways is it just builds this incredible community around it through participation. So not only is it an excellent resource for us as a charity for fundraising, and it's what we formulate a lot of our strategy around, is the funds that we can generate through Run the Runways. But one thing that's sort of happened organically from Run the Runways, which we never anticipated, is the impact that it has on the individuals who are taking part. We've got a Facebook group that's got nearly 600 members, really supportive. People are posting on there every day about how they're getting on. But also it's a really safe space. So if you're having a bad day and you want someone to talk about it, then also similarly, people are saying, I really struggled to get out for a run today, and the support on there is just phenomenal. And it's a really good tool for us to kind of offer that individual support to people.
Yeah. And Mental Health Awareness Week, these weeks, they come along, and there's lots of them these days. What does having a week there where the focus is on mental health, what do you think that means for a charity like yours, but also for just more generally for people to take time to think about their own mental health?
Well, I think it's a paradox, really, because you get the Mental Health Awareness Week where the best thing about Mental Health Awareness Week is that people talk about mental health. People seem a little less guarded and a bit more willing to talk about their own mental health, but also it gives organisations an opportunity to promote positive mental health and well-being within the industry. But again, what we've got to remember is mental health is important throughout the year, not just Mental Health Awareness Week. So that's where I talk about the paradox. Is what we don't want as a charity is for this massive influx of communication regarding mental health during Mental Health Awareness Week, and then everything just tailors off for the other 51 weeks of the year. So for us, we use it as an opportunity just to promote some of the things that we're doing throughout the year, signpost people to any support that they might need, but also helping us promote some of our own resources and the participation of Run the Runways.
Yeah, I suppose what we've definitely seen in recent years is an idea, I guess, that people's mental health, that employers, even entire sectors, there is a responsibility that they have for their staff's mental health. That probably wasn't something that any employer thought about even 5-10 years ago. It's something that's relatively recent, isn't it? So companies that you work for, in your case, even maybe the military, do you think they are coming around to this idea that this is part of what they must do as an employer? It's part of what being a good employer is all about. Yeah,
so there's been some really good studies recently. I know Trinity College at Dublin have done a lot of incredible work on psychological well-being in safety critical workers, so not just pilots but also air traffic controllers, engineers, and actually mostly cabin crew, looking at sort of self-reported mental health incidents and sort of psychological risks that might bring. So because of these studies and because of the high level stuff that's been going on, I think it's since 2018, EASA mandated that there's a peer support program for pilots. But one of the main things that we promote as a charity is it's not just about pilots. Just because these peer support programs are focused at pilots, only 3 to 4% of pilots actually use them. Whereas something like 15% of incidents in relation to safety are attributed to mental health. So you can see there's a gulf there already between the amount of people that are getting support versus the amount of people, or the risk of a mental health incident. And that's just for pilots, and that's just the ones that are reported. So what we like to do, or what we like to promote within Aviation Action, is that it's about the industry. It's about more than just the pilots. It's about supporting the cabin crew. It's about supporting baggage handlers. It's about the everybody within aviation deserves the same level of support. I do think it's something that individual organisations have become more aware of and are more in tune with. But I think the challenge is always going to be the fact that there is still a stigma around mental health within aviation, and individuals are very reluctant to go and see someone within their own organisation to talk about their mental health because licenses are on the line, medicals are on the line. The repercussions in our industry for being pigeonholed as being someone who has poor mental health have such big ramifications compared to any other industry. So there's always going to be that sort of brick wall that's put up where people just kind of put up and shut up, which is a shame, because we should be able to talk about mental health as openly as we would talk about a broken leg or a broken ankle, but it's just not the case within aviation. So we hope that Aviation Action provides that independent support so that people do feel a bit more encouraged to come forward, because they know that confidentially and independently they can go to an organisation that can signpost them to the support they need without them feeling like they're compromising their position within their own employer.
Yeah, I can see that's a really tricky one to overcome if people feel that reporting that they're suffering is going to be damaging to their career. What about outside of the aviation industry, in the general public, does Aviation Action have a role in sort of almost educating the general public that these jobs can be highly stressful? A lot of them are directly consumer facing, and a lot of things happen in aviation where you have to deal with problems and issues that come up. Is there a role for aviation action in that sense, in terms of educating the wider public?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something. If I'm honest, it's something that we've steered clear of, just because we are, the way that we exist is aviation people supporting aviation people, and we don't want to spread ourselves too thinly. And we have tried to remain impartial on a lot of things as a charity up to now. But I think we are growing, and it's certainly from a strategy point of view, something that we're looking at is getting a bit more involved in policy, getting a bit more involved with holding the industry a bit more accountable for mental health. And also, what we want to grow into is being that organisation where, it could be a badge of honour to have had Aviation Action come and have a look at your organisation and give you the green tick that you are supporting your people, right. Effectively. But as far as outside of aviation, I think it's more trying to promote the fact that mental health is important within aviation, and hopefully it'll grow from there.
Yeah, well, that takes us on to the kind of things that you do offer. So you mentioned before, potentially putting you in touch with the right people to get the help. But what are the kind of things that Aviation Action does offer as part of the help that you give people who come to you for assistance?
Yeah, so one thing that we've recently launched, which is quite proud of, is we've got a new Aviation Action app. And the whole premise of the app is to try and promote healthy habits and positive mindsets, positive habits, really. So it's, we talk about the stress curve and the bucket, and trying not to fill your bucket until the point which it overflows. A lot of what we do as a charity is trying to minimise the people going over that stress curve by promoting healthy eating, healthy habits, good sleep patterns. So our app holds people accountable to that. So you'll go through, you'll tell the app what sort of things you want to improve. So it might be that you're not sleeping enough. It might be that you're not eating healthily enough. It might be that you want to do a bit of meditation. It might be that you've got high levels of stress. And the app will then help you. We've got celebrity mentors and industry professionals who you can watch blogs on and videos, who also help support you through the process, and basically help lower those stress levels and avoid going over the curve. But what we're also doing now as part of Run the Runways and the funding that we're raising through that is working with a great lady, Dr. Jan Smith, and her company Mind Yourself, about what we do when people have gone over that curve. So we're working with AI and other technologies basically to try and help support people by having our own peer supporters. So we're in the process at the moment of identifying and training our very own charity peer supporters, so that they are, again, aviation people who are supporting aviation people and are aware of the needs of those people. Okay. Other things we do as well is throughout the year, much we're doing with Mental Health Awareness Week now in September, suicide awareness. So we work closely with another charity called the Jordan Legacy, and Steve Phillip there, who provides suicide awareness training for us there. And we do other things as well, like we'll do walk and talks in Snowdonia. We'll signpost people to all sorts of support if they get hold of us as a charity. And yeah, basically throughout the year we hold different events.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier about getting a sort of the tick from Aviation Action. Do you go into companies to sort of almost audit what they do, or just provide advice to companies?
So we are providing advice. We have our own mental health awareness booklet that we've designed. So we have worked with individual airports, etc., and a few different businesses. But that's kind of part of our 3 to 5 year strategy. Really, is to become that almost industry standard that Aviation Action have come to you. They've audited the way that you provide peer support. That we've had a look at your mental health support programs and initiatives, and we endorse them and kind of work with you to effectively improve safety across aviation.
Yeah. So we've mentioned Run the Runways, and that's one of your big funding earners of the year. How else do you raise funds?
We have people who individually raise money for us as a charity. So we've had people doing bake sales and ultra marathons and other things. So it's usually people getting in touch with the charity and looking to raise money on our behalf.
Yeah. And obviously, the industry is full of events and awards nights and so on. Are you involved in those in any way to get fundraisers during those events?
It's certainly something we're looking at the moment and exploring. We are talking at a European conference in Heathrow in June, the SWIFT conference. So again, it's just about our growth now and trying to get the message out a bit further than we have previously.
Yeah, fine. So obviously you said you're growing as a charity, which I suppose in some ways it feels like a bit of a negative because you don't want people to need this kind of.
Yeah.
Really, in a perfect world, you wouldn't need an aviation action. But to be fair, that's always going to be the case. So going forward, obviously you see this charity growing in importance. What's your ultimate ambition for aviation action?
A bit like I touched on, really, is just more people knowing that we exist. We've got support from EASA this year with Run the Runways, and that has really helped galvanise us with our footprint. A lot more people are now aware of us as a charity, and the levels of contact that we're getting now are unprecedented, really, which is really encouraging for us, not only because it helps us grow, but also because it shows that there are industries and companies out there who are willing to come to us and ask for our help, which can only be a good thing for the safety of the industry, really. So really it's just trying to become better known and more embedded within the industry as the go-to almost de facto mental health organisation within aviation.
Yeah, and obviously you're UK based and UK founded, but with EASA that gives you a sort of a European footprint. Are you sort of global in your scope?
So most of the support we offer is UK based, but the beauty of the app that we've now developed is it can be downloaded worldwide. Yeah. So that's really given us the opportunity to expand our reach. So we've had people downloading our app now across the globe, which is great for us because it's a resource that is free. There's no subscription, so anybody can access it. And if you're across the other side of the world and you need mental health support, then by all means download the Aviation Action app.
Yeah, fine. Okay, so thanks for explaining about Aviation Action. I think it's doing a really useful job in the aviation sector, and really something that I'm sure people really value. So we wish you all the best with growing it. If anyone listening to this wants to get in touch, wants to offer support or even better some funding, how do they do that?
Yeah, you can go to our website, which is www.aviationaction.org, or we're across various social media platforms. So we've got our own Facebook account, our own Instagram and Twitter. You can also email hello@aviationaction.org or contact me directly on LinkedIn.
Good stuff. Martin, thanks very much for that. And like I said, best of luck, and hope Run the Runways goes really well this month. And best of luck with all your activities in the future. So thank you for joining us on ABNcast. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Lee.
We're delighted that our friends at Amadeus have agreed to be the launch sponsor for ABNcast. And while they do not endorse the opinions and views expressed, they are keen to support a new forum for open discussion and debate around the future of aviation. Amadeus's technology powers the global travel and tourism industry, inspiring more open ways of working, more connected ways of thinking, always with an eye on how the industry can evolve, on how the travel industry can better serve travellers, bring people together, explore new experiences, and do business. Travel should be meaningful and personal, and it must be centred around the traveller, which is why Amadeus is investing to create the technology to put more power into people's hands. As an industry, we only progress by working together, and Amadeus's open platform is connecting the entire global travel and hospitality ecosystem. Our environment, our communities, and our destinations matter. Together with our customers and industry partners, Amadeus is working to make travel a force for social and environmental good, and ABNcast will be placing a specific focus on these themes in future editions. To find out more, visit www.amadeus.com and make sure you subscribe to ABNcast, which you can do on Aviation Business News' YouTube channel or on Spotify, so you don't miss out on any future edition. And please tell your friends and colleagues all about us. Thanks very much.